Hello. My name is Belle. I use she, they pronouns.
My name is Maeve. I use she, her pronouns.
My name is Xavier. I use they, them pronouns.
My name is AJ, and I use she, her pronouns, and we are very important people, aka VIP.
Alrighty. So today we are going to be talking about the film Double Indemnity, directed by Billy Wilder and released in 1944. And this is kind of the story of a door-to-door insurance salesman, kind of the definition of your average guy, who is turned into a cold-blooded killer who decides to help a woman escape her unhappy marriage by murdering her husband and making it look like an accident. So then she can live happily for years to come off of his accident insurance. And so, yeah, we will mostly be covering the subject of the paradox of really, really intense criminal activity happening right under the nose of a very unsuspecting public.
This is in fact said basically straight out during the film when Walter Neff is talking to his work friend Keyes, who is investigating them right behind the door, when he tells him, you know why you couldn't figure this one out, Keyes? Because the guy you were looking for was too close, right across the nest from you. Because he was sitting there, he was inside and Keyes was outside and you just couldn't see it.
Yeah, and a lot of really interesting moments happen in that insurance building. For example, the movie opens on a car speeding through almost empty streets in the middle of the night, but it passes some construction workers who look up and wonder what's going on, swerves past another car, and it like almost drives onto the sidewalk, and finally arrives at the insurance building, and our main character, Mr. Neff, is let into the building by a doorman who fully doesn't notice that he has a bullet hole in his shoulder. And just is making small talk and talking about like everyday occurrences as if nothing shady is going on in the middle of the night with this bleeding man.
Yeah, as if it's not like 4 o'clock in the morning and, just another day. Some guy comes in to work at 4 a.m. and and that doorman thinks, doesn't think anything of it. Like it's just some normal thing that happens all the time.
Yeah.
Until he notices hours later, oh, there was some blood dripping from him.
Yeah, he gets through telling his whole story on the wax cylinders, which he's telling. That's what he's doing, telling the story onto those, and like, so he's like leaving a message because he thinks he's gonna get away with it.
Yeah.
It's weird that he gets through so much of his story and then without anyone interrupting him, or like seemingly no one notices the blood until like much later in the story.
Hours later. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we, the audience, don't even know that he's bleeding until like, something's wrong with him. He's walking really funny and he's breathing hard, but you don't actually see the bullet hole or the blood until much later in the film. So like in a way, we are also the public that he's like getting away with it right under our noses. And I just thought that was really interesting that they show you how he starts to tell this story, but they don't give you the full picture until the end, when the public starts to catch on.
And I think like that's this whole like unsuspecting public aspect of the film. It is incredibly important considering like how unsuspecting everyone is. Neff is supposed to like be committing the perfect crime, yet is just throwing out clues and evidence like all over the place throughout the movie, discussing his plan in like well-lit environments and like grocery stores.
Yeah, that first grocery store scene is so crazy, where that woman walks in between Neff and Phyllis, who is the love interest, and she literally is like, "Oh, sir, can you reach that for me off the top shelf?" And
like mid-sentence of him talking about it too.
Yeah, like fully walks up, overhears, and then like doesn't get it still, and just is like, "Oh, I'm too short. They always put the things I want on the top shelf."
Yeah. it's almost not even an unsuspecting public. It's just like a completely ignorant
Totally
public. Like they
oblivious.
just are completely out of the loop.
Yeah. It's they trust so much the characters in the film in the society that they've created and in the safety of that community that literally like they suspect everyone except for Neff. Like
Mhm.
they really like come up with some crazy stories to describe how this man died, including suicide, including his daughter's boyfriend, and literally like Neff is so guilty and it's so obvious, but nobody wants to see it because he's like this normal stand-up guy who's
Yeah,
just a guy.
he's the worker's man. That's it. But
Yeah,
the other aspect of the paradox is that the worker's man is committing the perfect crime and has the entire blueprint for the perfect crime just set out in his head already. Just like
exactly.
locked and loaded to go.
Yeah,
Like he was already on the inside. Like when he said to Keys when he was describing this crime, in this business you can't sleep for trying to figure out all the tricks they could pull on you. And in that business, he's kind of getting inside the crimes without actually doing them, but slowly he's eventually figuring out, because you got the wheel right under your hands, you know every notch in your heart, and you figure out all you need is a plant out front, a shill out in the bet, and suddenly the doorbell rings and the whole setup is right there in front of you. So he's kind of slowly been infiltrating this whole crime thing without knowing it. And then suddenly here's a poor innocent gorgeous woman who just happens to have a husband that needs to be killed, and he's just the man who knows how to do it. And she also knew that he was the man who would know how to do it, because as we find out at the end, she was planning out everything the entire time, and she was really the mastermind behind all of this.
there's so many layers to like the underestimation that he underestimates her so much, that he really thinks he's taking the reins, and in he's like he knows what's going on, but he is still almost the unsuspecting. He is still almost positioned as like in the end the guy who got taken advantage of and like the guy who really didn't know her intentions all along. So there's so many layers of like it's just shrouded in all of this complicated mess that she's created, and that he like really like led her through, but somehow didn't know that he wasn't really leading.
Yeah, which kind of goes into like almost his willing ignorance with Phyllis as well. Because literally the first question she asks him is about her husband's insurance claim, and he's immediately like, "Oh, you're trying to kill him. You want
Yeah,
to kill him for money." No, I'm not
and
doing
she's
that.
like
Actually, on second thought, I'm gonna do it. Like, he knows
Yeah,
exactly what her web is, and then just willingly jumps directly into it.
and it doesn't take much to change his mind.
No.
Like
no,
he
that's
just
yeah,
kind of
that's what I was gonna say
It takes
as
an
well.
anklet, and that's it.
And
yeah,
finding out that he occasionally hits her, and then like, okay, you're the damsel in distress, I'm gonna be your knight in shining armor, I'm coming to save you, I'm
Yep.
crazy about you, baby.
yeah, he's calling her baby like that first night that they like he's like, oh, my baby. Like
Yeah.
they've been married for like however long, but they've known each other for like a total of 5 days.
Yeah.
um yeah, I think there's a lot of layers to their relationship that's like super indicative of just like how women were treated, and how like there's always going to be an element of like not knowing what's going on when you don't think that women have anything to say.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
um
there's like the element of kind of women as being like, you know, the unsuspecting, like, oh, a woman could never commit crimes or like do such a thing like that, but then, you know, ultimately she is kind of the person that's behind all this and orchestrating everything so that it works out in the best possible way for her. So that, I think, yeah, she in herself is like a whole different unsuspecting person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a fall guy. Like she planned Zucchetti
Mm-hmm.
and used him and lied to him about her stepdaughter. That took a lot of planning.
And we learn that it's not even the first time that she's killed someone.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
That was a very clever way to kill someone, what she did.
I know, yeah.
She had pneumonia, open the curtains, no one's gonna suspect you.
Yeah. No, it and the way that they talk about that look in her eyes as being like the only indication and the only way that like anyone like knew what was wrong. And how Lola really talks about like when she saw that look again, she knew what happened, but she was the only one, and only because she was the only one who knew it happened the first time, because she did get away with it the first time and got exactly what she wanted.
Mm-hmm. And I think you also get that sense of, she's getting exactly what she wants when Neff is strangling her husband in the car, and you get that shot that goes in on her face, and she's just like sort of doing a little half smile as she sort of knows that this is exactly what she wanted to happen. She wanted, Neff to kill her husband so that, I mean, she technically she didn't do the killing. That was all on him.
Yeah,
so things are going according to her plan. Yeah.
Which that's another weird aspect of this crime too. Like that scene where he's strangling her husband. He does it with zero hesitation. This is again an ordinary man. To just without hesitation do this very elaborate and like just elaborate and sneaky, stealthy killing.
And just like a pretty violent, like you have to like feel the whole process of the death happening. Like he was like and not stop, like that is like a really intense way to kill someone without a moment of hesitation. As soon as she signaled for him to do it, he did it. He just like, got up and got in there, and it's just like he really has no second thoughts about the whole thing because he's so willing to do anything for her.
Yeah.
I think especially because he's supposed to be this unsuspecting guy. So if he's never done something like this before, it's kind of weird to think that he has like no problem doing it. He's just able to do it so quickly without a second thought.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's also so strange that like when they get home from that, he's talking about like, and I changed my clothes again and my list was complete or something. He says something about like finishing his crime checklist. Of like things you have to do to not get caught. And he like runs over it all in his head, and he just knows it. Like there's no internet. Like you don't look up how to commit a crime. He just like already knows, and already knows how to not get caught. And he's very thorough about it. There's no panic. There's no intense emotion that like overwhelms him. There's no, I don't know, I guess eventually he's like undone by her in the end, but like the guilt doesn't force him to go mad. Like he's just like the same guy, but now he's killed someone. And I don't feel like that's how like a regular civilian person would react to murdering.
Yeah. I think his only hesitation at the beginning of the movie is when he's being like, no, I can't do this crime. Keys, his coworker, we'll find it out. He's too good. And that's it. That's his only hesitation. Yeah. Nothing about it being completely immoral and just like, murdering someone. It's mainly, oh, I might get caught. Damn. Like
yeah, he's like, it feels like he's already thought out the rest of it and decided that it doesn't matter. And the only thing left is the one guy who he like loves. Like he says, I love you too, to Keys.
Yeah.
And he like, that's his like, no matter how Keys is to him, he loves him and he knows he's good. And so it's just like, I don't know. Yeah, it's like he knows that that's the one guy who's a little bit less unsuspecting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to go back to the crime checklist thing that you were mentioning, that it reminded me of when he's getting ready to like leave his apartment to go out and commit the crime. He slips in a piece of paper in the telephone, and then he slips in a piece of paper on the doorbell, so that if anyone calls or rings the doorbell, the paper will fall out and he'll know that someone came by. I find that completely ridiculous that someone who's never committed a crime, or really I guess maybe thought about committing a crime, would go to such lengths to like I guess a little bit paranoid about people watching him, because he knows a lot about people who do things to get away with crime, so he's trying to get away with it himself.
Yeah, he knows everything about like all the phony claims that come in, and he is so paranoid because of it, because he knows that Keys catches them. Like there's a scene when Keys is like, this is a phony claim, and I know the phony claims, how many do you think I get? And so his paranoia is way up there, and I think that like obsession with like technology and that like paranoid sort of process for like watching your back is like very film noir, based on what we've heard.
Yeah, like all of his movements have. Oh, sorry, you can go, Maeve.
I was saying, like, when he's talking to Keys about the phone, when he's talking to Phyllis about Keys and saying, and Phyllis said, I just thought about leaving him in that, so it would be auto asphyxiation in that car. And he immediately just says he would have caught that immediately. So he knows that wouldn't have worked. He knows that the shooting in the stomach and saying that it was just he was cleaning his thing wouldn't work. He knows everything that wouldn't work exactly. And he knows what would work.
And he knows one way.
Yeah, and the one way that would work is falling off a slow moving train.
Well, he knows the one way to get double the money.
That's true. That's true.
So he's like really thinking beyond the how can we pull one over, and how can we pull the biggest one over is where he's going.
Yeah. It's not just like, how can I get away with this at the bare minimum? It's like, how can I get away with this and make like the most money possible? So he's like really far into it. He's got like that criminal mindset at this point, when he's like, let's go for the double indemnity.
Yeah, he just like jumped in head first.
Yeah.
He does eventually only want to get away with it when he says, Keys knows you can't sue me. I just want to get away with this now. He kind of loses it a little bit, but not to the point of remorse of killing the person. It's just
no, never that.
Gas chamber now. Let's just get out of here. I'm not riding the train to the end with you.
Yeah, because I think like eventually he starts to suspect that she really wants him to go down with her. If she's going down, like he is going to go down worse, because she didn't kill anybody. And so, like when he realizes that like she doesn't actually care about him, I think is when he realizes that like the whole crime was kind of messed up a little bit, and now they've got to get out, or they're like, he's got to get out or else he's going down too.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how he doesn't realize how deep into it he's really gotten until, he sort of has this moment of confrontation with her where it's like, he realizes that he is in pretty deep, and like he did commit the murder, like she said, well, I didn't kill him, like I only wanted him dead. I think she actually says that at one point. Yeah, and he was the one that did the killing, so he's kind of at fault here.
Yeah, and that's exactly what she wanted. And he just thought like, oh, I can't let this little poor lady kill her own husband all by herself. And then all of a sudden, all because he just like really couldn't believe that a woman was like a whole person.
Yeah. No, literally everyone in the movie just sees Phyllis as a pretty object. And
Yeah, even the camera.
yeah, like when she's first introduced and it's just looking at her legs and nothing else. But what I guess makes her dangerous to the narrative of the movie is that like she knows how to use that objectification. Like she knows that everyone in this narrative is looking at her as just a pretty thing, and that
Yeah.
she could use that to just beat all of them.
And the only who doesn't is, shoot, what's her name?
Lola.
Lola, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Like the only other like main female character in the film is the only person who like actually attaches any ability or like oh, what's the word? Never mind. Like yeah, like the only person who thinks that Phyllis is at all capable of doing anything.
Yeah.
And she's seen it happen before.
Yeah, I think Phyllis kind of used, you know, her kind of, I guess, attractiveness and her knowledge that she is kind of seen as an object to a lot of men. I think she first did that in the first murder, in which she like allowed her to marry Mr. Dietrichson, which was supposed to like give her money, but it didn't really work out that well.
Yeah.
But she did kind of leverage that opportunity as being the nurse for the wife at that time.
Mm-hmm. And I want to also go back to Lola and say, like, even though Lola knew exactly what was going on and told people about it, she was also a woman, so nobody believed her, and like everybody could have known about what happened if they listened to her. But again, she can't have a complete thought.
People say that, you know, it's like, oh, it's a woman and she's explaining this thing, or she must be hysterical, she's making things up, it couldn't possibly be real.
It's always hysterical, like, oh, you're just hysterical.
Yeah,
you're emotional. It's that time of the month for you right now.
And and Neff really plays that card with Lola. He convinces her that she like doesn't know what's going on, almost like she always remains like confident in the fact that Phyllis, you know, she's seen that look in Phyllis's eyes before and she knows what it means. And I mean, she saw Phyllis putting on a veil 2 days before they killed Mr. Dietrichson. So that's like some pretty damning evidence that like she knew it was going to happen. And still Neff was like, oh, you know, you're crazy. You're so sensitive.
It also has historical precedent. What inspired, it's a little tiny bit off topic, but the thing that inspired Chicago was real women who got away with murders because the entire jury was male, and they just thought, no, they're fine. They just were sad, and it's fine. They couldn't have done it. That's historical. That actually happened, and it reflects in this film.
Yeah, and it just feels so insane, but like those attitudes were like very common and like still in many forms exist today.
One of the most famous, I mean, Lizzie Borden. She got away with it.
Totally.
Said, oh, she couldn't have. She's a Sunday school teacher.
Yeah. I would say like another good moment in the film that made me think was when Neff is listening to the announcement where they're saying that Zacchetti was caught. And it just made me think about how like he is the only one, unless Phyllis is also listening to the radio, who knows that that's not true. He's the only one out of the entire public who is listening to the radio that knows the truth. And the entire like town is being told that it was someone else. Like he is actively getting away with it. And even when the public thought they knew it all, they were completely wrong. So I just thought that was a really good moment. And it also has to do with, again, that like obsession with communication and technology. that we see a lot. Another big one was anything to do with Jackson.
Oh my God, I forgot about that for a
I
second.
know.
Oh my God. Yeah, that one is mind-boggling because what he gets on the train pretending to be Mr. Dietrichson, and this Jackson guy's in the back, and he's smoking a cigarette, and he fully hears Neff's voice because they have a conversation.
He's nosy as hell.
Yeah. Yeah, he just keeps talking. They're having like a pretty solid conversation. He like you could at least see some of his face and like his hair and his height.
His shoulders, like he
Yeah.
had a very distinct frame from a lot of the other guys in the film. He was very broad and tall and like
much taller than Dietrichson.
Yeah.
Yeah. And as soon as he gets Jackson to leave, he dives right off the train.
It's
like
literally he closes the door and then immediately goes.
A second later and seen it happen. And known exactly what went on. But then he meets Neff in the office and has no idea who he is.
He makes like one brief comment of like, "Have I seen you somewhere before?" And then Neff's like, "No," and then that's it. And then she's like, "Oh damn, all right, I guess not."
He's like, "Oh yeah, sorry about you must be right, and I'm just a stupid normal guy."
Yeah, it's like, dude, you had it right there.
And he knows enough to know. He knows enough to know that the pictures of Dietrichson are not the guy that he saw.
Yeah.
So he clearly saw the guy well enough.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think Jackson, what he even said when he was talking to Neff, it was like something like, "Oh, do you go fishing? Do you go like fishing up north or something? Is that where I know you from?" And I just thought that was like so funny. This guy's like ready to have a whole conversation and find out where he knows this guy from. And I mean, if he had been like persistent, that could have ended it all right there.
Yep.
Yeah.
If he had like, I don't know, recognized him a little bit more than that.
Somehow that part of the perfect crime was not on the checklist of having like a somewhat decent disguise and making sure no one sees him.
Yeah, what the heck? He could have put a scarf on. He could have hunched over a little more. Like
literally anything. He just put on a hat and it was like, we're good.
And everybody wears a hat anyway. It's not like a more severe disguise. He's always wearing a hat.
Yep.
Like, I don't,
There are a couple moments like that where you think that it's gonna go bad, but then, oh, it's fine. Like when she's trying to start the car.
Yeah.
And they're oh, sigh of relief, start the car, it's not starting. And at first you think, okay, everything's going wrong. And then it just sort of starts. So there are definitely a couple moments that are like that.
I also was like a little nervous at the train station because they were talking so loud and passing so many people while discussing like their intimate plans about dumping the body.
Yeah. They're not
just like
and
then they like
being discreet, like using like some weird like keyword or something. They're just openly talking about it, like as if me and you are talking right now. Not even library volume conversation.
No, so loud.
That was not indoor voices.
No.
And they only stopped talking about it like 2 feet away from the conductor.
Yeah.
And then they're like, and then she's like, "Oh, be careful with your leg, honey."
Pretty much at the same volume as they were talking at before, too. So like,
they're like their comments to set their story straight are the same volume as their comments about dumping a body, which just seems like that's bad protocol for a crime.
Yeah.
There should at least be some key words, like you're swapping out some words, like instead of maybe like the body, it's like the package or something.
Yeah.
Like the delivery. I don't know.
Well, that kind of works into the paradox of all the people who are over there, they're on the outside and they'll hear a word or two, but they're not on the nose. So even if they're not using code words, what they're speaking about, no one really knows about, and no one is suspecting, oh, they're talking about the body. They must mean like the body of the car or just something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're just not paying attention. Like, I'm guessing if I was in a train station and I walked by some murderers who were openly discussing about the body they had in their suitcase, I would not notice, because
Yeah.
I'm focusing on get through this crowd alive and get to that train. I'm not focusing on
Totally.
maybe there's a murderer. I don't care.
Yeah.
Because I'm on the outside.
Yeah.
And I feel like the people in that time and like where they are just like, I don't know, like, I guess this sort of a crime might happen often. Like, we know Phyllis has already killed someone. We know there are a lot of phony claims coming into the insurance office, but still, like, literally, it seems like nobody's ever heard of a crime happening in their life because
Yeah.
they just are so trusting.
I think that's a big paradox in film noir in general, because I mean, yeah, there's pretty much most of the movies we've seen so far have it's they're trying to commit the perfect crime and get away with it. Seems like everyone's trying to commit the perfect crime though. So either everyone is involved or everyone is out of the loop.
Yeah.
It somehow,
and because we get to be like an objective viewer, like we can see what's going on in the middle of the crime, and it helps us realize that like there is no way for anyone in the public to see inside and to see what's happening, because clearly if you're watching it from Neff's perspective, nobody cares at all and nobody's watching him, you know.
Yeah, he has this
Top shelf.
Yeah.
Remember, like, she's just on the top shelf. That's all I'm worried about right now.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
occupied with what's going on in their own lives that they literally can't notice that two people are talking about murdering someone 2 feet away from them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's that another kind of the paradox is there's like Neff has a lot of paranoia that like, you know, oh, like everyone must know. That's why I have to like be so sneaky and do all these things and leave pieces of paper in my phone so that, you know, I know if someone would call. So there's kind of that, like he's almost suspecting everyone, but then at the same time they have these conversations about murder just like in the grocery store. And it's like, oh no, like they won't suspect anything. This is an unsuspecting place. So it's kind of, you've got the like, everyone is like suspecting you, and then also like no one is suspecting you at the same time, which is kind of a weird mix.
When he thinks that people are suspecting him, he's wrong. Like with the phone, like nobody rang the doorbell, nobody called him, and like his paranoia kind of gets to be like subdued a little, and then maybe he can like continue to be bold and talk about it in the grocery store, and because clearly nobody's catching on still, and he's checking, you know.
Yeah.
Well, I think that was what the paradox was, and eventually we kind of find out, well, maybe the perfect crime doesn't really exist, because if it is perfect, then since it doesn't exist, then everyone's going to be like, wait, that's too perfect. Like, and I'm like, oh, it's a little bit, that's too neat. It was too easy.
Yeah, because like a real crime doesn't happen like that, and like it really the perfect crime does not exist. It never goes as seamlessly as you think it will.
That crime we were discussing in class about the guy who got shot and it looked like a suicide, but it also looked like a murder that was framed as a suicide, that then could have been a murder that was framed as a suicide that was actually a suicide. So many layers that's the type of crime that is not perfect and didn't get solved, but if it was way too perfect, then maybe it would have.
Yeah, totally.
I think we kind of want a little bit, because we sympathize with Walter Neff because we've seen his whole story. We want him to get away with it, but then, you know, after the intro and you see, you know, he's like kind of he's been shot and he's sort of walking weird and he's telling his story onto the wax cylinders. I think that kind of is a little foreshadow of like, yeah, maybe he doesn't really get away with it, and maybe that's okay, but we want to find out how he got to where he is right now.
I
Yeah.
wanted him to get across the border. I didn't want him to go to the gas chamber. I was like, oh, come on, make it to the elevator. Go across the border. Live in the
I
woods.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah. He just couldn't make it. I thought it was like so ridiculous that as he's like laying there, he like reaches for his cigarette and like puts it in his mouth, and then he like tries to light it, and Keys, right? Like Keys lights it for him or something.
It's
if-
the first time that Keys lights the match, because
Yeah.
before it was the other way
Yeah,
around.
yeah. I just what a way to go out.
Okay.
Smoking a bloody cigarette. Luxury.
Right.
Absolute luxury.
As you're bleeding out, you just gotta
Yeah.
Just
you know,
gotta
be
light one
masculine.
up.
There
No,
we
I
go.
was feeling a bit stressed, so I pulled out a cig, you know.
All my worries went away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm about to go to the gas chamber. Who cares?
When he said that, he was trying to get across the border, for a second after that, I thought it might have been like a non-literal, because he goes through the door and it's Pacific All Risk Insurance, and I was like, it's not really a border, but like Pacific Ocean. I was like, he is like crossing over. So I thought maybe he was like gonna go through the door and like shoot himself or something, but nah, he just falls over and that's it.
Yeah.
After telling his story on wax cylinders for 2 hours, bleeding out very slowly.
Bleeding so much. By the end, he's like, it's like so much going on.
Very calm and collected narration as he's bleeding out.
Yes. Yeah. Just like goes like sometimes. But that's pretty much it.
I would listen to that audiobook going to go to sleep.
Yeah, he's got a great podcasting voice.
The Walter Neff bleeding out narration.
ASMR.
An hour loop.
So ridiculous.
Is there anything else that we wanted to cover over there?
I think we're doing. Yeah.
I think we thoroughly discussed. I enjoyed myself watching the film very much. I think it's very much with all noir, where there is enjoyment, but there is also a bit of camp in there. Like,
Oh yeah.
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's a little silly by today's standards. I get why it was, very gritty and real back then, but today it's very entertaining.
Yeah, it's a fun watch. Like you will have a good time, even though in the 40s when this came out, everyone was like, "Whoa, this is super intense. I can't believe this is being released." Now it's just a fun time.
Yeah. Can we wrap up with a silly quote?
I would love a silly quote.
Sure.
Okay. It was a hot afternoon, and I can still remember the smell of honeysuckle all along that street. How could I have known that murder can sometimes smell like honeysuckle? Maybe you would have known, Keys, the minute she mentioned accident insurance, but I didn't. I felt like a million. And it's so ridiculous. And that is what Neff says after meeting Phyllis. And I think that's a good summary. Good way to wrap up.
Okay. So we have been very impactful people.
Yes.
Hope we've impacted you a decent amount.
Yeah, I think
Hopefully
I accidentally said very important people at the beginning, but I meant impactful. So if you made it to this point in the watch, just know that it was supposed to be impactful.
Because they're all very impactful, and this film was very impactful on us.
Yeah,
There
throughout
we
the
go.
film, a lot of impact was felt in the film throughout.
We said
A dollop of impact.
impact.
Big old dollop.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'll see
Well,
you next week.
see you guys next week.